This is TWiT. Apple sent out the invitations on Thursday. Lori Gill on Tuesday during MacBreak Weekly, she said, I predict. I don't know if she knew something or something. She said, I predict Thursday. So that's it. It's a week from Tuesday. It's September 10th. Yep. That's kind of what we thought. It'll be, of course, at the Steve Jobs Theater in Apple Park. This is the invitation. It's a kind of a beautiful glass apple with all the colors. They've gone back to the colors, haven't they? The rainbow.
Yeah, it's interesting though, right? Because it's slightly different. Like they don't have the full 6 colors. Like I do like having the purple in there, but yeah. It's,
see, it's why you talk to somebody like Christina. I didn't even notice. There's only 5 colors. You're right.
Yeah, no, I was looking at that. I was like, where's the orange? And I was kind of looking at this stuff. I was like, oh, that's interesting that they have purple there.
You see what I mean? Talk about Kremlinology. And then it says by innovation only instead of invitation only. That's just a pun. I don't know if you can read into that. Still. Are you going, Christina? Do you still get those invites? No.
No, I do not get those invites. I wish. I would love to go. That would be amazing. But no, I do not get those invites. Ironically, I will be in San Francisco, or not San Francisco, San Jose on the 11th, but I will not be there on the 10th. I know.
You could probably change your flight.
I know. I could. Well, I don't see that it's too crazy. It's one of those things already. Like I'm going in and going out.
Tim Apple, she still loves you.
I do. I love Apple. I obviously, love Microsoft, but Apple always has a very soft spot in my heart. And obviously, I'll be watching from the Microsoft offices, probably with the Office for Mac team, which is what I usually do. I usually watch the Apple announcements with some people from the Office for Mac team. We watch like WWDC and the other big announcements.
There are not a lot of question marks as usual. Once they get to manufacturing these new phones, the leaks from China come fast and furious. It's expected there'll be 3 new phones, the successors to the low-priced 10R, the medium-sized 10S, the giant 10S Max. Will they be the 11R, 11, and 11 Max? I don't know. Somebody's lately they've been saying the 11 Pro, and it does make sense because you got iPad Pros and you got MacBook Pros, so that Pro line kind of would fit in. They've never done that with the iPhone.
I'm less interested in the iPhone per se, as I don't think there's going to be a jump. Like it's hard to imagine that there's a technology shift like there was for
jumps
the
anymore.
5 to 6. Yeah. And the 6 to the 8, there was a substantial jump. If it gets half a millimeter thinner, I'd actually be rather happier if they put a bigger battery in it, sort of thing.
That's why I love this this Note 10 Plus. They put a 4,300 milliamp hour battery in that.
Yeah, no, I'd love a bigger battery. I would like to see some things maybe with the camera to take on the Pixel.
I think you're going to see that, Christina. I do think you're going to see that because this is now the real battleground is no longer phone, screen, fingerprint, touch ID. The battleground is camera. They are going to do what Samsung did a couple of generations ago at Huawei also. They're going to put 3 lenses in. I love it on my Samsung phones where I have a telephoto lens, a normal lens, and a wide-angle lens. That's nice. Apple is rumored not to be quite doing that. They're going to use the 3 lenses to do more computational stuff.
Yeah, that's what they've always done with the 2 lenses is to try to kind of create that effect.
Right.
You could obviously switch between one or the other, but they try to use them all together. No, that'll be interesting. Although what I'm hoping is if they do have the 3 lenses, that they will allow the APIs to be used by certain camera apps.
I love Focus, for instance, which allows me to use that.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. And but that would be nice if they have those features so that you could isolate them if you wanted to,
Right.
If you're using the right tools. But I think that they like to err on the side of simplicity and really just make it so that, we're going to give you the most perfect photo.
Yeah, the Focus camera does some of the things the Pixel does, FOCOS, by taking multiple images and stacking them and
and Khalid is a really, really good camera app.
Same guy, right?
Yes. And Ben and Sebastian. And I would love to see what they could do with the 3rd camera. Yeah.
And of course, you're going to see a Pixel 4 a month later. And it seems to be that Google keeps leapfrogging the camera capabilities of Apple. right after Apple announces all these new features, Google says, well,
because Google is so much further ahead with the AI stuff, right? Like I think that when it comes to the hardware, Apple has historically, they've been able to source the best sensors from Sony and do really good stuff. And for a really long time, they also had the best software. They were able to really write the software to make those sensors just do amazing things, where you could have the exact same sensor in a Samsung phone and an iPhone, and the iPhone would give you better results. But Google, because they are so much further ahead with the AI stuff, they are doing some really incredible things on the software side that I think that honestly, this is one of those areas where Apple's commitment to privacy hurts them, because they don't use their user data the same way, because they have this both public and kind of internal kind of policy about how they're using this information. They don't have all those data points where they can build models to do things like, okay, we're going to light up, darker images and expose them so it looks like you've got, full light, like the Pixel can, and to do, even things like portrait mode and whatnot. Like if you compare the AI portrait mode on the iPhone XR and on the Pixel, there's no comparison. The Pixel's significantly better. And I think it's because Google, because they have so many more data points, and because they're not opposed to using those while they're building their software, they're at a big advantage. And so I'm interested to see what Apple's able to do on that front. I don't doubt that they have the engineering talent to do amazing things, but I do wonder, it's like, Google does have this huge treasure trove of, billions of data points from users who've been using Android.
I think that's overstated.
Services.
I think that Google's much touted AI thing, that's not as a competitive edge as people think.
Really?
I think it's much more about getting the software right down on the camera and the control of the sensor. But Apple's been very conservative about the sensors that it buys, and Google's been much more willing to throw more resources. But
the Pixel 3 had a dedicated AI chip for photo imaging.
Yeah. But correspondingly, the Pixel 3 is weaker in a number of other areas. It's the rounding out of it.
No, I agree with you.
Apple balances the photo. Like, focusing on the photo capability ignores dozens of other features of the phone that are just...
Point. The Pixel 3, for a long time, closed out programs overly aggressively. There's all sorts of software issues.
Poor memory management, rubbish battery life. It's open to malware. It's about one of the most vulnerable smartphones in the market.
Well,
the list goes on and on.
Every phone's up into malware. We have a story a little later on about Apple and malware we'll get to. But
so my point would be, don't over-rotate on just taking photos, because that's one of 400 features in a smartphone that you want. I would be much more looking for wireless charging. I'm very tired of lightning cables, super tired.
Well, Apple has wireless charging now.
No,
they already have it. The XS. Although, and
now what about the watch?
The watch is wireless, but you have to have a special puck. And remember, Apple tried to make the AirPower and couldn't, but Mophie and others have done it. Yeah.
I would like to see the sort of the promise that we got with the wireless charging out of the last event actually come out. So Apple ships its wireless charger using an open standard.
AirPower is dead. Get with it, Greg. They already said we're not going to make it. We can't.
No, we know that. I'm aware of that. What I'm saying is the commitment was they're coming with wireless charging, but a couple of models of phone isn't the whole range. Why isn't don't just have a charging pad that all my devices go on? I'm expecting to see new AirPods. I think Apple's making a big commitment to wearables. I think they see that everybody's going to buy a phone. It really doesn't matter what they ship. They'll make good money out of it.
Supposedly a new watch will also be announced.
I expect their way of growing their business is to get more services, but also to grow adjacent markets to their smartphones.
Accessories.
I think Apple's watches, AirPods, and iCloud, the cloud services and so forth. But so I would expect at this event to see growth in watches and AirPods and other accessories, health accessories.
So you don't think that Apple has a disadvantage because of its stated privacy policy compared to Google and even Facebook and Amazon, where these companies are happy to gather all the information about you they can? Doesn't that help them with at least with their voice assistant?
I don't believe so. I think you can hear the story that Google pushes and you think that it's correct, but when you go and talk to people who do DLML AI, they'll actually tell you that once the models are trained, you don't need lakes of data. The data lakes aren't actually all that relevant, and you can send it down. So you don't need...
Google even said that at Google I/O. They said, we're going to take these trained sets and we're going to compress them way down, and you're having it all on the phone. And of course, that's what Apple's wanted to do for a long time, which is all on phone.
Whether you've got 1 petabyte or 10 petabytes or 100 petabytes of images doesn't matter. The same model's result.
Getting that initial data is the problem.
I was going to say getting to that initial model, because I mean the thing is that look, Apple has finally started to publish things in AI journals, which is great. But Google, with TensorFlow, I mean, I don't think it's arguable. I think it's actually completely inarguable that Google is very far ahead when it comes to AI as compared to Apple, just all out. I'm not making that statement. What the statement that I'm making is whether you've got a 1 petabyte data lake or a 100 petabyte data lake doesn't necessarily improve the models. Right? I don't disagree with that. My point is I don't think the models on iPhone are anywhere near as good as the models on Google.
Anybody who has used Siri knows that.
Anybody who's used Apple Photos, I do.
Well,
look,
Siri's a different. Siri is about 5 years behind Google's voice, so it just doesn't have time in the development cycle.
Well, but it started 5 years earlier, and it actually started 10 years earlier because it started as a DARPA project. I mean, it goes way back.
Yeah. I mean, yes, they bought Siri. Siri wasn't an Apple invented here.
Siri in 2011, and Google Assistant came out later, and Google might have been doing some voice stuff, but they certainly it wasn't as if they were years ahead of Apple. But I mean, even just looking in terms of like your data models, though. So look at Google Photos. I don't use this, but most iPhone users I know do. Look at Apple Photos. Some of the big features with iOS 13, and I joked about this like in June. I was like, oh, finally, Apple Photos is going to be getting, some of the same features that Google Photos has literally had for years. But I know even without using, the final version of iOS 13, it's not going to be as good as Google Photos. Now, I just personally don't like. I feel weird trusting all my photos to Google.
But again, I don't care about Google Photos as much as I care about a better calendar app or a better Hey Siri or a better HomeKit or a better.
User. I'm just saying that when you're looking at the models, if you're making that kind of argument, I don't disagree that at a certain point, it doesn't matter how big the size is.
I think Apple focuses on the 90-10 rule, and if 90% of the people take a photo and that looks good, we're done.
Yes.
We just don't need to keep.
You're exactly
Nobody
right.
cares. Quite honestly, I don't care. I can take my phone out, I can take a photo, and it's perfectly good enough. All these things that you're talking about make no sense to me whatsoever because I take a photo for my personal memories. I do not expect to pull out halide and start adjusting the focus and the white balance. All I want to do is take a photo of my daughter at dinner, and I'm done. Right?
Although that's kind of what Google has done with a single lens on the Pixel 3 is you take the picture and it's a great picture. That's I think what they're going for. Yeah, but that's what Google does so well. Whether you go with 3 lenses or a half a dozen, whether the little goblins pop out and go and take the photo for you and do whatever. I don't care. What I want to see is wireless charging, Apple's problem, which is I still believe Apple has a problem between this desire for privacy and this ability to make Siri better. And they just 2 days ago put out a press release talking about changes they're going to make in the way Siri gathers data. They even say in this section here how data makes Siri better. They talk about the thing they got in trouble for, grading, which is having humans listen to the requests. And they said that there's a value, but as a result of people's privacy concerns, we realize we haven't been fully living up to our high ideals, and for that we apologize. So they're not going to, by default, retain audio anymore. Users will have to opt in to help Siri improve. I think that's going to hurt them because most people are not going to opt in. And when customers opt in, it will no longer be contract workers listening. It'll be only Apple employees. That's going to cost Apple, but of course, Apple has plenty of money. So I think Apple is caught. I think Apple put that big sign up at CES saying what happens in your iPhone stays in your iPhone. They got caught by The Guardian because it wasn't true. Credit to Apple. They're going to improve Siri's privacy protections, but I think that's going to hurt them.
I don't think it will because I don't think anybody gives a hoot, right? And I don't think
I do. I don't use Siri because I'm tired of Siri saying, "Let me show you what I found on the web for that." That's I want to make an appointment.
Alexa, or they're not using Google Voice either. It's a feature that no one uses, mostly because they're in alpha. These voice agents are so early in the cycle.
Christina, do you use a voice assistant ever?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say
I use it all the time.
Yeah, and what's actually funnier to me is that I probably it's like the more technical people that I know probably use them less. I see less technical people using Google Assistants and using Amazon devices.
My in-laws, they will say, allow Aloysius play Elvis.
Yeah, my mom uses her Aloysius all the time. I have, other relatives who have kind of a combination of Google Homes or Amazon devices.
I'll tell you another data point that is an actual data point. 5% of our listeners listen on voice-activated devices, Google Home or
that's a big
Echo. That's huge. That's a 5% increase in
podcast
listening.
Here's a data point. In our audience, the number's 0.
Well, you've got a different audience. That's actually what Christina was just saying. Because you have a more technical audience.
Yeah, I was going to say more technical, and it's actually what's interesting too is when I see kids all the time interacting with them, like very, very actively, and that's interesting to me in the same way that touch. We very quickly kind of, starting with the iPhone, have there's been this whole generation that's been this touch first generation where you see it, where they touch every screen, whether it's a TV screen or a computer monitor or whatever. They just expect to interact with it that way. I don't think we're quite there with voice, but I'm starting to see more and more, kids especially younger kids who just immediately instinctively know to start talking to their devices. And I would use Siri more if it were better, right? Like, I use it to set alarms, and I use it, that's basically kind of what and sometimes to play music, but I wish I could use it for more things. I just haven't been able to rely on it in so long. Whereas I do use, my Amazon devices to
Here's some more stats. This was from the podcast movement we were at a couple of weeks ago. Edison Research interviewed 2 different groups of podcast listeners, longtime listeners, they called them veterans, and newer listeners, they called them rookies. Of the veterans, 7% listen to podcasts most on a smart speaker. Of the rookies, 9%. It's a larger number. And I honestly, in fact, I think what you're really seeing here is fewer of the new listeners listen on computers.
Yep.
And more phones and smart devices. And so I think I honestly think voice is, I think, Greg, you're an outlier.
Yeah, my wife, my 12-year-old, my grandparents, they have all switched to listening to only music on using a voice assistant. My 12-year-old does all of his web searching through a voice assistant.
That mind boggles.
Yeah.
Because there's no link to click afterwards. I guess you just want the fact.
He just asks his phone to look something up instead of typing it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It saves him a lot of time.
Yeah, so it's really conditioning.
But I do have to push back. I have to push back on Greg against his wireless charging accusations, because every single product that Apple has shipped since they made the wireless
including the new
AirPods, including the watch, including the iPhone, they all wirelessly charge.
Everything with the iPad.
The watch doesn't charge.
Do people want wireless charging? Do people want that? Is that a real important feature?
Do.
I use it for,
people do.
I wish it were faster. Right? Yeah. Like, I have a pad on my desk at work that I drop my AirPod case and my phone on. If it were faster, I would probably use it more. And I would say this, like, I don't drive, but I could imagine that if you are in a car and you have, like a Qi charger, mount thing, like I know Mophie makes them, that would be really useful, right? To be able to kind of wirelessly charge your phone while it's in the car without having to have yet another kind of plug hanging out. But for me, it's the slowdown that's the issue. But I see people using it all the time. I just often forget that I even have it. Like I said, I've got the pad.
I do it for overnight. So I have a charger next to my bed, and that seems to me like the place people would use it most often.
Yeah. See, and I have my charger next to my bed. I guess it's got the thing where it has the place where I can put my it's one of those 12 South chargers, and it has like a place to watch.
It's the watch and the AirPods and the phone. Yeah.
And so I just kind of plug everything in. But at work, I finally found a use for that Qi charger once I got the AirPods with the wireless charging case. I was like, oh, that's useful. I can just drop my AirPods.
Get this. This is my Surface Studio replacement. It's a Lenovo Yoga. It has a Qi charger right here.
See,
Is that wild?
Yeah.
It's actually on the base of the computer, so I can have my phone charge while it's sitting there. Is that wild?
See, that is brilliant. Well done, Lenovo, because that's actually really smart. And there are a number of couch companies now that are putting like USB plugs into their sofas.
IKEA is putting it into all their tables.
Which I love, but I'm hoping maybe the next thing will be like Qi chargers too, Okay.
So I guess we are saying wireless. Greg was right. Wireless is the next big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't say that it wasn't there. What I was saying was that I want to see more progress around that front. I think that we've had a good first effort, and I'd like to see more wireless. And instead of having to pay £100 premium for AirPods that support wireless charging, it should be the default.
Should
it shouldn't cost $1 million.
I'm sure that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and then as Christina says, it should. Can we get faster wireless? Now I know there's perfectly practical technology reasons as to why there's not, but I'd like to see that happen. I also wonder if Apple will start to focus more on fitness. People are very much in love with these rings that monitor sleep and heart rate.
Yep.
And I think that's a natural market for Apple to be in.
They should that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I actually had an instance this week where my Apple Watch really helped me because my heart rate was elevated, and it was like my resting heart rate was like 165.
Yikes.
So I had to go to the ER, and I have an appointment with a cardiologist on Tuesday.
I saw your tweet. I meant to ask you, are you okay?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I might have been dehydrated. I'm getting some stuff checked out, but it was having the watch was amazing for a couple of reasons. A, I was able to run the EKG, which even though it didn't detect anything, it showed the sinus rhythm, and so the doctor was able to look at it. But B, it had the whole history of because I started to feel it higher in my resting heart rate when it was like 115, 120. I was a little concerned, and then it started getting higher than that.
Did you get the warning from the watch? The watch said you're not doing anything.
Right, and then my arm started tingling, and that's when we started to kind of freak out.
Wow.
And so as we go to the hospital and whatnot.
Too young to have a heart attack, Christine.
I know, and I didn't have a heart attack. It wasn't that. We were not really sure. It might have been some dehydration, might be some anemia. Who knows? But I have an appointment on Tuesday.
Good.
It's going to be fine. But having all that data there.
If I had known this, I would not have booked Greg Farrow on the show. I apologize. We're going to kill Christina.
No, I'm fine. No,
we're having fun.
You're going to give her a heart attack, Greg.
You told me we wanted to have a show, so
she's going to pass out.
It's fun. We're having fun here. This is fun.
But genuinely, it's probably a bad thing for certain hypochondriacs to have access to all your health information that way. Yeah. But for me, it was really beneficial. And it wasn't one of those things where I was even it was funny when it got super high, and when we went to the hospital and we were telling them, they were like, were you freaking out when it was this high? And I looked at my husband, and he was like, no, she wasn't really. I was like, no, I was the calm one. He was the one who was freaking out. But having, the history of all that stuff to show, I think is so important. And even the doctor was talking about how great it was that people come in now
just
with
that
this information.
More is better, right? Even if it's not medical grade or whatever, it's still useful. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it gives you something.
Even though it's not calibrated or medically, it's not permissible in a court of law. It's not necessarily medical grade, but they can use that. Yeah.
I mean, it's better. I have a baseline. I can show this was the history. This is what my heart rate was doing from this period to this period.
Do me a favor, Christina, though. If your watch says anything's going on, let me know. We've got Aunt Pruitt in the wings. We could swap out Aunt Pruitt. It's very calm, relaxed, soothing, and we could save Greg for somebody we want to wake up. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. She'll be fine. Let's take a break because actually I kind of buried maybe the most important Apple story of all. Apple is changing its right to repair stance. This is dramatic, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But first, a word from our sponsors. Give you all a chance. Let your heart rate go down. Calm down with the blood pressure. Do you ever have panic attacks, Christina? Because that sounds like it could have been a panic attack.
But it wasn't that. It was literally like I was getting out of the shower, and I felt it, and I put my watch on, and I looked at it, and I was like,
Yikes.
And then when it started going higher, when I was sitting down, I was like,
Yeah.
So I texted my boss. I had a meeting. I was like,
we saw the tweet. We saw the tweet.
I sent the tweet after.
Oh, no.
I knew I sent the tweet after I knew I was fine, but because I wanted to let people know, the watch is good.
Yeah.
Basically.
It's pretty amazing. You're not the first person who's told me stories like that. The other day, I was doing this kind of weird push-up you do with dumbbells. What do you call those? There's a name for them. And I put the dumbbell down too hard, and my watch said, "Did you fall? Are you okay? Is everything all right? Are you dead?"
I love that.
And then, but that was okay. I understood that. But then I was dancing, and it did the same thing. I thought, "Oh, this is not good."
Funnily enough, when I was hit by the car, watch said nothing.
Nothing.
Although that might have been before they updated the software for that stuff. Yeah. I don't know. But when I was hit by the car, the watch was like
it was cool.
Anything.
So
the watch wasn't like.
Is this the bus? The one you got hit by the bus? Okay.
Well, it was hit by the car thrown under the bus. Yeah.
And the watch goes, she's fine.
Basically.
You got an appointment in 10 minutes, Christina.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Leo's dancing and the watch goes off, but you get thrown under bus and you die.
Yeah, there's some calibration. My dancing, though, is much like being thrown under a bus, Greg. I just want you to understand.